What's going on, Port fans? Welcome back to another video on the channel, and today we're going to be speaking about the recent news about Port Adelaide proposably announcing an application to join the VFL from 2025 onwards. It's been a big story that's been breaking out the last couple of days. A lot of back and forths, a lot of behind the scenes rumours and everything like that have come out, and I wanted to dissect a little bit about it today in a video. I thought, this is a very weird time. It is the most Port Adelaide thing ever, by the way, to have an announcement where we're applying for the VFL in the middle of December on a Sunday night. That's when it was announced. Nothing has come from the club about this. They decided to break that trend of news and announce Butters for a 2-year extension, which is fantastic, to the end of 2026. But overall, this has come about thanks to John Ralph and news from the Adelaide team and everything like that. They've all run this story, and it's got a lot of weight to it. And I wanted to talk about a motive first and foremost about this, and why Port Adelaide would do this. And there's a lot of evidence that backs this as well. Since we became one club, since we became a reserve side in the SANFL, it's never been the same. It's never been the Magpies that Port Adelaide fans grew up knowing and watching and idolising and loving. That's never been the case for the last 10 years or so now. And, we've made a couple of grand finals. We've showed signs of success, but whenever the AFL team's not doing well, the Magpies aren't doing well. And the correlation between fans of the Power and the fans of the Magpies have never really become that connection. All the diehards have definitely supported the club, and I, for one, haven't been someone that's grown up with that rich history that many Port fans have, so therefore the love for the Magpies isn't the same as for the Power side, and we've become the Port Adelaide Football Club as a whole. And I think that it's clear as day now that is one club. It stands as one club. There's two teams, one club. We share the successes and the history of the players from back then, the players now. They all know what it's to be the Port Adelaide Football Club, and in a sense, that spirit that the Magpies will never really die. But the motivation here is simply to get Port Adelaide out of the SANFL, have a reserves team in the AFL, and have a proper development system in place where Port Adelaide have control over the reserve side, and they have full control of top-up players and players that are injured, and they have that ability to develop their own team and bring back academies in a way, and diverse into that and standalone teams, rather than we see teams like Collingwood and teams like Sydney. They have that, and we see as well the recent change of the Sydney, Gold Coast, Brisbane Lions, Greater Western Sydney. All these teams have sort of brought their their NEFL sides into the VFL. They've wanted to culminate all of that together, and we've seen that. And in essence, that works because the Gold Coast Suns won the premiership in the VFL. Like, that is an amazing thing. And we talk about the local sides in the VFL, clubs like we talk about the local sides in the AFL, the VFL, like Coburg and such. Werribee, they've had all this rich history brought up, and we see the reserves comp being a standalone thing. It wouldn't necessarily take away from the SANFL, the VFL as such, the waffle and all that. They still have their own, and that has their own rich culture, and it really becomes the bodies of each state's purpose, and that's to play local footy, and that's all it will ever will be. Having reserve side for the AFL in there doesn't make sense. It's been an inevitable process to come, and a vision for a long time. It should have happened a long time ago, and for some reason it hasn't. There's been a pause on it, and now Port Adelaide want to get on the front foot. Adelaide are joining that front foot as well. They want to be a part of that. They're just sort of sitting back and waiting, sort of like what happened with the Adelaide Oval deal. Port Adelaide on the front foot, making the charge. They're leading the way, leading by example, and that's something we've always been able to do. And as a football club, we've always done that. We've definitely had our challenges. We look at wanting to join the AFL, did the same thing. Didn't get the license. Adelaide got a team. In the end, 1997, we finally got there. We never stopped until we got exactly what we wanted out of those. So it's a motive that I think is right. It's the right time to do it. It's the modern world, and I know the rich history of the Magpies and the Port Adelaide and the Sample sort of distinguishes in a way, but you never leave that history. You never let that go because it's happened. It's a part of the culture. It's part of the club. We've been a club that's left competitions before, and we've always had that representation in places. So it's something to figure out down the track, but the initial thought is it's a good call for Port Adelaide, in my opinion. I wanted to look at some of the pros before we go into some of the cons, and it'll be interesting to see some of the legends of the club who have represented the Sandful more so than the AFL or just being representation of Port Adelaide in general. So some of the pros that I thought of, I think having, as I said, a control over our reserves and our own development is a key part here. It's why clubs are building a culture and a system where they work. They make their own adjustments and their own coordinations with each level that they're a part of and involved with. So if they're trying to get certain personnel into the VFL side or into the reserves comp, and they want to give themselves the best opportunity to win at both levels, it's going to bring that sense of you own your own destiny, you own your own development, you're owning everything. The Sandful has its own different rules, it has its own limits and cost caps and everything like that. So it's limited to what you can do as a club. So having that brought back into your own hands and under one system becomes a lot more clearer. As I said, it's a push for a reserves comp as well. So I've been big on a reserves comp. I've had this idea in my head for 5, 6, 7 years. I think it's one thing that it should have been done a long time ago when GWS and Gold Coast entered the conversation. And it's something that just should be implemented, and no way should it be disregarded as a negative thing in that sense. It's club. They're all together, all under one system. It brings back the level as well of you go to a game, you pay money to go see your team play. You're watching Port Adelaide play Richmond, for example, at the Adelaide Oval on a Saturday night, 7:10 p.m. Your reserve side is playing beforehand. It brings that back to what it was about when you were a junior, or you're playing, like now I play for SPOS, and you go there, you go watch your C grade and your B grade play and see who's playing well. You go cheer them on, and then you watch the A grade. The pinnacle of the game day experience. So that brings that back. It's on and off the field where it works really well, and I think fans become more involved in that aspect, and they start to know their own club. Whereas, as I said, like a lot of fans aren't connected with the Magpies in a way where they're going to go there every week and watch the team play and see who they're thinking should come into the A's next week. It makes a lot of sense on the field, money wise as well. Off the field, it's again going to help the AFL and create a system. So I'm all for it. And as I said, we set the example. We're leading from the front. It does have its bites and does have its limitations. The one big question here is for Port Adelaide in particular. It's the Magpies. It's the black and white. It's the prison bar Guernsey. Where does this sit? Now, it explains so much as to why we've pushed to have the representation of the prison bars in the AFL. We got the chance this year against the Crows. It's going to be every showdown. We want it to be every showdown. That's why there's a massive push, and there's a lot of rich history with that Guernsey. The Magpies will inevitably die if we go into the VFL. You got the Collingwood Magpies. You've got Southport, who are black and white. This is not going to work. I see no way in shape or form they allow us in the VFL and Collingwood to play with the black and white prison bar Guernsey. Southport are lucky, I guess, the Southport Sharks. But inevitably, if there's a VFL comp or a reserves competition for the AFL, you're going to be playing every club pretty much from, in the same league. It's just a league, it's a reserve. So the same rules will apply. How does that work? Maybe we get allowed to wear the prison bar Guernsey because it's not represented in coverage or is not promoted as such. Is it going to be, in a sense, a way where we make an alternative? It's these things that we have to consider. And I think a lot of Port fans are going to voice this opinion once they have a sense of realization of this is going to happen. This is what's going to be the case. And I think we'll know more once we come into early next year, middle of next year. We'll have a clear indication of what's happening. But that's the one thing I stand with here is the big negative of it all is what happens to the Magpies, what happens to the prison bar Guernsey, what happens to that history? Does it die? Do we still represent one club? What becomes of that? So there's a little bit of a roundabout of it. I think if we enter the VFL firstly, there may be no sign of the reserves comp. Maybe it'll just be under a VFL umbrella, which in a sense comes back to those early days of being a VFL. They have full control. They dictate what you do. So from all senses, it's a positive. If you look at Gold Coast and see how they've progressed and they've won a premiership in the VFL before the AFL, which is very funny. But the overall question, and I think a lot of people will talk about it, what happens? What happens here? Is this a good move by Port? I've heard multiple legends, Warren Treadray on the Big Deal podcast, stating that it's not the Magpies we used to know. It's become a modern evolution of a club. 1870 is still there. It still stays. The club doesn't change. It's just a push for a different competition. It's the same thing as what happened with the AFL. A lot of Port fans will agree that we don't like the sample. We've been treated poorly. The player limitations on development. The cost caps and the capping of players and everything like that. The captain can't be AFL associated and all of that stuff. Where does it leave the SANFL as well? It does sort of have a big part of its culture peel off in a sense because the rivalries, the gate income, the broadcast rights, does it become a very local centric thing where SANFL becomes like local cricket with the Shield? Is it just streamed online and streamed through KO? Is that how they generate their revenue? It's going to be an interesting time and a build up that I think, and it's a very interesting story. It's a build up of over the time where Port Adelaide have just wanted to have their own control, and we've always been looked upon as someone that needs to do what we have to do to get success. If this brings success, look, it's a step in the direction. By no means does it mean a guaranteed flag in the AFL or anything like that. Does it mean we get a better understanding of where we sit as a football club, both in our development as a in the B grade sense and into the A grade sense? Absolutely. It's all for to quote Hot Fuzz, the greater good, in a sense, for our on-field performances. Off-field becomes a little bit sketchy and a bit cloudy about what happens, but you can only go from where you stand at the moment, and that is the big rumor. And there's no clarification that Porter have done this, but the application process obviously has to happen 12 months in advance while they're under contract. It's like a player. If they want to sign on, they sign on normally with 12 months to go on their contract. Zach Butters did it. Otherwise, they will say, we're going to wait until the end. So to have everything set up and ready to go, you have to be joining or applying to join the VFL or join the comp 12 months in advance. And that's what Port Adelaide have seemingly done. So I'd love to get to know your thoughts and everyone involved, subscribers, people that aren't following of Port Adelaide and have a keen eye on this, or just your thoughts in general. I'd love to have a good discussion about it because it's going to be very interesting to see how it all pans out. Port Adelaide in the VFL. There's going to be so many memes, man. Thank you so much for watching. This is the most I've talked on a video in a long time, unless you watch The Glass Table, which seemingly the last episode is out, so make sure you go check that out as well. Been a fantastic year with JT on the podcast, so make sure you check that out, the last episode there. My last video will be a year of 2023. That'll be coming out over the next few days, so I'm looking forward to sharing that. It's been a big year on the channel, so thank you very much for everyone's support. I'll get that out as I said, in the next few days, and reminisce a bit about 2023, which has been high and low, not going to lie. So thank you very much for watching. Leave your thoughts in the comments below about this potential move by Port Adelaide. Subscribe to the channel if you're new for plenty more Port Adelaide and AFL content to come your way. And overall, Thank you very much for watching for 2023. My name is Anthony, and as always, Cante.